welcome back to a new watercolour video. Today I'm doing a paint along of this cute little house and wildflowers. So the line work will be available to download on my Patreon page. That's free of charge. I'll list everything below where I'm using all the colours. I'm using Daniel Smith again for this one, Archie's watercolour paper, masking fluid, but I'll list it all below for you. Okay, so let's get started. So I've traced the outline onto the paper. Now I've left out the outside border because that was just for a guide to be able to centre the picture. And this outline here, it's just an indication of where the grass will roughly end. So don't draw a strong black line for that, just a very faint outline as a guide, because if you don't have a guide you might end up going further and further up or further and further across. Now I'm going to put some masking fluid on some of the parts. I'm using Winsor Newton. I do like this one. So I'm going to dab this onto all the little flowers and the little stepping stones as well. And if you notice, these little flower shapes are all completely uneven shapes, so you don't have to worry about getting the shape correct, because flowers from a distance are just little uneven blobs. A little bit smaller towards the house where they're further away, and these ones a little bit larger at the front. So I've added lots of extra smaller dots and I'm going to leave that to completely dry. Now that's dry, I'm going to mix up some colours to get started with. So this is Manganese Blue Hue by Daniel Smith. I'm going to mix up some of that. Don't want it to be too watery. And then this is the Mayan Blue or Mayan Blue. So this is a much darker blue. Then I also want some Serpentine. So this is just a warm green. You don't have to use the same colours as me. And the Zoisite green. So this is a really desaturated green. And I'm also going to use some Jane's Grey. So I'm going to start with the house using the Manganese Blue, and I'm just going to carefully do a layer. Now that is far too much. I don't want it to be that dark, so I'm going to add more water as I go. I'm just going to carefully go around the edges. On both the house and the little side shed. I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom because we're going to join the green on, so we want to leave that like a wet uneven edge at the bottom. I want this particular area, I want the right area of the house very, very light. And then we want it darker further over to the left of the house. It doesn't matter if it's all uneven, that's absolutely fine. Make it a little bit darker under the eaves. I'm going to leave a little bit at the edge there, and then I'm going to get the Mayan Blue. Paint the Mayan Blue at this side bit and then drag it into this, drag it over to the left, kind of blend it in. Get some more Mayan blue, make it darker under the eaves. This is going to be quite dark, the little side shed, but this is just the first layer and we'll add more layers on there. And the Mayan blue on this area here. And again, don't take it all the way down. Now I'm going to get the Zoisite green, not quite that strong. Get a little bit of Serpentine as well. And then I'm going to carefully join it up onto this wet area on the house like this. So I'm pulling back like this. And I'm just going to take that up to the steps. Then do the same on the other side. Just put a blob down, the Serpentine, maybe a little bit of water because that's quite strong. And then I'm just doing this motion, so I'm dragging back and carefully joining that up to that wet area. And then just taking it up to the steps like this. Now we want this to be quite weak at the sides, so then I'm going to add more water. Drag that out. Maybe put a little bit of blue in there at the edges. Drop some blue in. And then the rest we want the Zoisite and the Serpentine. So we want it quite green, darker kind of in the middle, but just kind of change the colours about like this, just dropping in the different greens. Then maybe a little bit of blue at the edge, let that mix in. Quite watery at the edge. Want more blue in there because this is going to be like background foliage, so it'll be a little bit more blue. Darker at the bottom. Then wash your brush out and go across the edge like this. Then I'm going to make sure the brush is almost dry. Take some of that out, just create a really uneven edge with the brush like this. So that's for the bottom part. Then I'm getting a small liner brush, got it quite wet, and I'm going to drag out some of that paint to make it look like long strokes of grass. And kind of like mess it up. And then do the same on this side. Water on the brush. So we want to get rid of that line and make it kind of uneven. Now, I don't want these harsh lines here at either side of the steps, so we want it to just kind of fade in. So I've just got a damp brush and I'm gonna just scrub on that edge a little bit. Wipe the brush off and just blend that. So that's layer one. So I'm going to dry that off with the heat gun and then move on to the next layer. Next I'm going to get some of that Jane's grey and I'm going to really water it down. So it's super watery. We want a really light grey colour. And I'm going to paint that onto the white framework on the house. And then I'm going to wash my brush off and pull a little bit out in the middle. So I'm going to leave that one a little bit darker. Just going to get a larger brush and do the whole of the door, which is quite dark because it's in shadow. It's being shaded by this little thing here. And then I'm actually going to go onto the steps, paint the steps grey as well. Then I'm going to get some stronger Payne's grey for this area. Not Payne's grey, Jane's grey, but most people have Payne's grey, so if you want to use Payne's grey, use Payne's grey. This is very similar to Payne's grey, only it doesn't actually contain any black. Yeah, sometimes Payne's grey can make the paint look a little bit dirty, especially if you mix it with other colours. So now I'm going to add some water and make it, oops, gone over there, and make it a little bit lighter towards the bottom of this. Now I'm going to go back up to this little roof section. I'm getting that stronger Jane's grey on the little brush. I'm going to paint some little roof tiles. So I'm going to do a little dash like this and then a little line to make a tile, but I'm slanting it in so that they're tiny little triangles. Make it a little bit longer. going to get that darker Jane's grey and paint in all the windows. I'm not going to paint that one in yet because we need to do another layer to make the paint much darker on this. I'm going to paint another layer over the door of the lighter grey. Now we want the steps, we want the wider parts on the step to be darker. I'm getting the lunar blue and I'm going to cover this whole smaller section in a layer of the lunar blue. I'm going to drag it down into points so that it'll just blend into the grass. Just in like strokes like that, and then it just blends into the grass. So see how it's a lot darker in this section here, so that it brings that bit forward, so it looks like it's much further back than this section of house. Now I'm going to add some little lines and detail onto the house, and then we'll move on to this area. I'm going to use this liner brush. You can see it's got a much sharper point than this one. So this is a 5/0 by Rosemary & Co. Series 221. I'm going to use Lunar Blue again. I'm going to get a really dark line underneath the eaves there, and then pull some of those out a little bit and make some just occasional lines as though the house is made of wooden slats. And just some kind of maybe like little rougher patches, a little bit of texture on the house. Little bit of shading here. Now I'm switching to the liner brushes, a little bit smaller but a little bit wider. I'm going to put a little bit of shading underneath here and down this side. And the same on this little window, just to the left and underneath. So I keep calling that blue Lunar Blue. It's not Lunar Blue, I'm so sorry, it's the Mayan blue. I'm not even using the Lunar Blue at all in this picture. So every time I say Lunar Blue, I actually mean Mayan blue. And with the Jane's grey, I'm going to put a few little lines on this side of the house. These need to be darker because this is just darker. Now I'm going under the eaves with the Jane's grey, make that it super dark. Next I'm going to move on to this whole area here. So I want it to be even darker underneath here. So I'm actually adding some Jane's Grey. I'm going to add it right up at the top, because we just want it to look super dark under here. I'm going to drag it down a little bit, clean the brush off, and just kind of drag it down with the dry brush. Drop a little bit more darkness in right at the top and just let it blend down itself. I'm going to paint this window in. Add a little door handle. Then I'm going to move on to this little roof area here. So Jane's Grey again, and make a dark line across here. I mean, it is a little bit fiddly doing this, and you could just do this with a pencil if you wanted to. Any of these little tiny bits, if you don't feel confident painting them, you could always switch to pencils for that little bit. I mean, personally, I'm just trying to improve, so I'm doing it with watercolour. I just want to get better at watercolouring. And I'm going to do a little line just on the inside of here. So it looks like there's like a little, I don't even know what to call it. A little, you know, an edge piece going back. Do some lines as though there's some little roof tiles on this. I've got a tiny little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm making these little, I don't know what you call them, these little things at the side of the door. I'm making a little shadow area at the top here. And then add a little bit of shadow to the top of the door and just blend that down. And I'm going to make a little darker lip just underneath the steps. I'm going to damp brush and I'm going to blend some of this out. I think this these little shadows here, they're a bit too thick, so I'm trying to lift a little bit of that off by just rubbing on the edge with the damp brush, and that's lifting out quite easily. So that's the house area finished. At the end I will add some little bits of gouache onto the edges, but I'm just going to leave that till last. I'm going to move on to the garden area now. So I'm going to get the Zoisite green quite strong on the brush, and underneath the stepping stones I'm going to add a line, so that's like a shadow underneath the stepping stones. And then I'm going to add some darkness over here to the right hand side of the stepping stones. Then I'm going to get some of the Serpentine, drop some of that in, then a little bit of Zoisite here, just some little patches. I'm going to do some little strokes and just some texture. It's almost dry now. Just rub some texture like this, but we want to leave some light areas as well. So just little bits of texture. Just rub the side of the brush to drag that upwards. But we want to leave some light bits because we're going to paint some flower stalks. You just take that up to the edge so it looks like there's grass at either side of the steps. Just blend that a little bit. I'm going to get some of the manganese blue, make it quite light, and I'm going to add some flower stalks kind of in the background, just a few in the blue. Little bit of blue texture just with the side of the brush. Just to kind of tie the blue in with the house. It'll send some of the foliage into the background, and then we'll put more greener foliage towards the front. Then I'm going to get the Zoisite, quite watery, and everywhere where there's little flowers I'm going to add little stalks. I'm going to use the thinner brush because they're too thick, so this really thin brush.
Easy rider on the highway, station wagon going slow, windows open, you are basking in the bluegrass radio. It is easy now to see you with your hand out on the wind. I keep this folded at the corner so that I could not forget. Folded at the corner so that I could not forget.
Okay, that's looking a lot better without that yellow masking fluid. So we're on the final stretch now, so I'm going to paint in the little stepping stones, paint in the flowers, and then add some final touches, and then we should be finished. I'm going to use up the Jane's grey that's already in the palette. I'm just going to paint that onto the steps.
It was then I had a knowing. You were waving till the bend. I keep this folded at the corner so that I could not forget. Folded at the corner so that I could not forget.
Now for the flowers we don't need much paint because they're so tiny. I'm going to get a little bit of new Gamboge, little bit of Quinacridone gold, Aussie red gold, maybe a little bit of Pyrrol red. I'll just stick that there, and then I'm just going to get the little brush and alternate the colours. Now some of them I'm going to have them looking like they're a white flower with a orange middle, like big daisies. So I'm going to do some of them like that. Hopefully, I think they do look a little bit more like fried eggs, but it doesn't matter. And then some of them are just going to be solid colours.
11 miles on an off day, and your shadow to the coast, past the surfing whitewashed beaches, under cypress trees and smoke.
I'm trying to make some of them kind of like that shape, and then some of them maybe like a cone shape, so it looks like they're on the side, like a side view. Drop some little bits of red in somewhere. Or maybe add some kind of tall grass. Just kind of faint so that they'll look like they're in the background. So to try and stop those looking like fried eggs, I'm going to get that dark Zoisite green and I'm going to try and carve out some petal shapes to make it look more like an actual flower. And I'm just going to add just some little bits of white gouache on some areas of these frames, just to bring a little bit of the whiteness out. I'm going to kind of dry brush it on there, so it's not all completely white. There's some grey bits, mainly around the edges. I'm not going to do it on that bit. See, the light might just catch like the very bottom of some of these areas. And the very last thing I'm going to do is paint a little line here. And I think I'm going to add just some little dots of white. Try and make these look a little bit more like daisies. Okay, yeah, so you can download the outline on Patreon and paint this yourself if you like. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please give me a like, subscribe, comment if you have, and I'll have another video up on Wednesday. So thanks very much for watching.